Hello viewers, welcome to my YouTube channel. Get ready for heart-touching stories. Don't forget to subscribe and let's begin.
The coffee shop on 5th and Main was doing exactly what I'd hoped it would do on a Tuesday afternoon. Nothing special. Which was perfect because I was done with special. After 32 years as the CEO of Meridian Corporation, commanding boardrooms and quarterly earnings calls, I'd spent the last 8 months learning how to be invisible. My daughter-in-law Victoria had made that abundantly clear when she'd married my son Gregory 3 years ago. I wasn't invisible by accident. I was invisible by design. Hers. You understand, she'd said to me during our first private conversation, which took place in her mother's living room while Gregory was in the kitchen making drinks, that your presence at family gatherings makes everyone uncomfortable. Your position, your expectations, the way you dominate conversations. It's exhausting. I'd been taken aback. I'd always prided myself on being fair-minded, progressive for my generation, but I listened. I always listened. It was a skill that had made me a decent CEO even if I made some mistakes along the way. When Gregory and Victoria announced their marriage, I had stepped back. I accepted invitations less frequently. I spoke less when I did attend. I tried to be the kind of parent that didn't hover, didn't assume my way was the right way, didn't weaponize my success against my son's independence. It had worked, more or less. The tension eased. I saw Gregory monthly instead of weekly. I asked fewer questions about their life. I donated anonymously to charities instead of hosting fundraisers where I might encounter the extended family. I was in every meaningful sense phasing myself out, but I wasn't ready to disappear entirely. That's why I'd been visiting this coffee shop 3 times a week for the past month. It was called The Daily Grind, and it was small, 6 tables, mismatched chairs, a menu that changed based on what the owner felt like making that day. The owner was a woman named Sarah, probably in her late 30s, with perpetually paint-stained fingernails and the kind of laugh that suggested she didn't take herself too seriously. But she was serious about her coffee. She had won some competition I'd never heard of, and the clientele was notably loyal. I'd come here initially because it was far enough from the office district that I was unlikely to run into colleagues, but I'd stayed because of the people. There was Marcus, a paralegal writing a novel. There was Chen, a graphic designer who was always sketching new logos. There was Aisha, who worked in HR for a hospital and seemed to be everyone's de facto therapist. And there was David, a young man who'd been working here for 3 months and had just been promoted to assistant manager. None of them knew who I was. Not even Sarah, the owner, despite the fact that my face had graced the cover of Forbes twice and appeared regularly in business news. When you have white hair and dress in anonymous jeans and button-downs, when you sit quietly in the corner and read books instead of checking your phone, people don't see you. They see what they expect. A retired person, maybe a consultant, a quiet regular who tips well and doesn't demand much. It was the most peaceful 8 months of my professional life. Usual, Sarah called out when I walked in on a Tuesday afternoon in October. The afternoon light was golden, spilling through the front windows. "Please," I said as I was settling into my corner table. The front door chimed. Victoria walked in, trailing my son Gregory behind her. My heart seized. I kept my head down, opened my book, a detective novel I'd been rereading, and tried to breathe evenly. Victoria was dressed immaculately, as always, in a cream blazer and heels that probably cost more than David made in a month. She was holding the hand of a young woman I didn't recognize, probably one of her work colleagues. They waited in line and I strained to hear. "I just need some coffee," Victoria was saying. "This place was mentioned in that article about authentic businesses, before they get corporatized and terrible. My mother-in-law is always talking about how she supports real businesses and makes these grand gestures, but she's actually ruined half the entrepreneurs she's met through her patronizing charity work." I wanted to see what she was missing. My stomach sank. She was talking about me. The discovery that I came here must have felt like a treasure trove of ammunition. "That sounds rough," Victoria's friend said. "She's not a bad person," Victoria continued with the tone of someone being generous about a bad person. Just completely oblivious to how her power affects everyone around her. She thinks she's progressive and open-minded, but she approaches everything like she's doing charity work. Even with her own family, she couldn't just be a normal mother-in-law. She had to be a presence. I closed my book carefully. I needed to leave. Victoria hadn't seen me yet. She was facing the counter and I was in a corner behind a support beam. If I left now casually, I could be gone before she even got her order, but I didn't leave. I don't know why. Some mixture of stubbornness and hurt kept me in my chair. Sarah was making Victoria's coffee when the back door opened and David emerged, carrying a large box of supplies. He wasn't supposed to work today. I knew the schedule. I always knew the schedule, another CEO habit I couldn't shake. "Hey Sarah," David called out. "The inventory from Meridian Wholesale came in. You got the premium beans like you asked for." My muscles tensed. Victoria's head snapped up. "Meridian as in Meridian Corporation?" "Yeah," David said, setting the box down. "That's the parent company. Sarah has some relationship with them. It's cool they give small businesses like us discounts on supplies. I think the CEO is apparently really into supporting independent shops." Sarah said she's never met them personally, but the account manager said the CEO wants to help places like this stay competitive. "The CEO is interested in small coffee shops." Victoria's voice had taken on an edge. "Apparently," Sarah said, looking uncomfortable at the sudden focus on the subject. She was sensitive about the arrangement, I'd gathered. She saw it as helping her business run lean, not as charity. She paid for the privilege of the wholesale relationship. It was legitimate. Why do you? My mother-in-law is the CEO of Meridian, Victoria said flatly. She probably did this to control you, create dependency, make you feel grateful. The coffee shop had gone quiet. I watched Sarah's face cycle through confusion, then comprehension, then something that looked like betrayal. Your mother-in-law is ElevenLabs, David asked slowly. I waited. I should have corrected it. I should have stood up and identified myself, confirmed it, explained it. But I was tired of explaining myself. I was tired of being the one who had to manage how my actions were perceived, interpreted, recontextualized through someone else's suspicions. Instead, I watched Victoria hang the accusation in the air like smoke. Yes, ElevenLabs, the ElevenLabs, Victoria said, who probably came in here playing humble and got some charitable satisfaction from observing real business owners. Did she ever tell you she comes here? She comes in 3 times a week, Sarah said quietly, looking at me in the mirror behind the counter, seeing me reflected there. Her eyes widened as recognition hit. Oh my God, you're her, aren't you? I closed my book. There wasn't much point in not speaking now. Yes, I said, standing. My legs felt stiff. I'm ElevenLabs, and Victoria is right about some things and wrong about others, so let me clarify while I have the floor. Sarah's face was unreadable. Victoria had turned to face me directly, and she had that expression on her face, the one that suggested she'd caught me in exactly the act she'd always suspected. I came here 8 months ago because I wanted somewhere to go where nobody knew who I was, I continued, looking at Sarah, not Victoria. Not because I was studying you or observing you or gathering material for some act of patronizing charity. I came here because I was tired. I've been CEO of Meridian for 32 years, and I am tired. I wanted to sit in a corner and read a book and drink good coffee and not have to be on. That's all. The wholesale relationship, Sarah's voice was tight. Authorized it through the normal procurement channels 6 months after you opened, I said. Not because I was watching you. Because David reached out to our corporate social responsibility team about helping small businesses source quality supplies at sustainable margins. I never knew it was your shop. I found out when David mentioned it one day, and then I realized I'd been coming here the whole time without knowing there was any connection. By then it felt too late to explain, so I didn't. So you lied, Victoria said. By omission. Apparently I did, I said. I was looking at Sarah though. I'm sorry. You have every right to feel that the arrangement came with hidden motivation even if it didn't. The optics are bad. The implicit power dynamic is uncomfortable. Victoria is right about that. She's wrong that you did it to control us, David said quietly. Everyone looked at him. I started working here 3 months ago, he continued. I needed a job that was flexible while I was finishing my certification as a therapist. This place hired me without asking about my credentials or my background. Sarah took a chance on me when a lot of employers wouldn't. And yes, I mentioned Meridian to her because I was curious about where the company's philanthropic money was going. And yes, she reached out. But it was my action, not hers. And Alina didn't even know. That's a generous interpretation, Victoria said coldly. It's not an interpretation, David said. It's facts, and I've worked at 3 different companies with CEOs who actually did what you're describing, creating dependency, controlling narratives, using charity as a power play. Elena isn't that. Elena comes in here, tips 25%, reads her book and makes small talk about the weather. That's not a controlling person, that's a person who wanted to be alone for a while. I think, Sarah said slowly, that I need to know whether that wholesale relationship is actually legitimate or whether it's going to disappear now that Elena is uncomfortable. The wholesale relationship is legitimate, I said. It will continue exactly as is because it's good business and it's helping your shop survive. But I understand if you prefer to dissolve it. I also understand if you want to have a real conversation about what that relationship should look like with full transparency. Both are acceptable to me. Victoria made a small dismissive sound. This is exactly what I'm talking about. The way you present yourself is so reasonable, so understanding, so willing to listen to everyone else's perspective. It's a power play. Even now you're controlling this conversation. I looked at her directly for the first time. Right, I said. I am controlling this conversation because it's happening in a coffee shop and I'm a woman with significant professional power. That's not something I can turn off by being humble about it. Victoria, I've tried very hard over the past 8 months to respect your concerns about my relationship with Gregory and your family. But I think we need to be honest about something. You didn't ask me to step back because my presence was uncomfortable. You asked me to step back because my presence made you feel less important. And that's fair, that's your right, but you should own that instead of dressing it up as me being overbearing. Not going to stand here and be psychoanalyzed by your mother-in-law, I asked quietly. Or by someone who spent 32 years running a corporation and learning to see when people are uncomfortable with power dynamics. I'm both those things. You married my son and that makes you part of my family, whether that's comfortable for either of us or not. But you don't get to rewrite my motivations to make yourself feel better about pushing me out. Victoria's face had gone white. You are the most self-centered person I know. Probably am, I said. Successful CEOs usually are. Job requirement. But I'm also someone who came to this coffee shop because she wanted to disappear, and who didn't tell you all about it because she'd finally learned when to keep her mouth shut. That's not controlling. That's actually the opposite. Sarah had been watching this entire exchange with the intensity of someone attending a play they'd paid good money to see. When I finished speaking, she looked at me for a long moment. Did you really not know the wholesale relationship was connected to me? She asked. I really didn't, I said. David didn't tell me which business he was referring to. It's a category of relationship we've had going for years, small business support. I authorized it through normal channels. When he mentioned your shop, I realized the connection, and then I was already a regular and I didn't want to make it weird. You already made it weird, Sarah said, by not telling me. I know, I said. I did, and I apologize for that. Sarah considered this. Then she looked at David, then at Victoria, then back at me. Okay, she said. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to continue the wholesale relationship with Meridian because it's good for my business and I don't think you're trying to control me. But I want the terms in writing, and I want you to have someone on your team contact me quarterly to make sure I'm getting fair treatment. And I want you to explain to me right now why you didn't just tell me who you were on day one. I took a breath. Because I was afraid that if you knew you would treat me differently, I said. You'd be overly grateful or overly resentful or overly careful, and I just wanted to be a person who came to your coffee shop, not a CEO, not a powerful person, just someone who liked your coffee and wanted to sit in a corner and think. That's fair, Sarah said after a moment. But it's not going to happen anymore. You're going to be the CEO who comes to my coffee shop and sits in the corner, and I'm going to know exactly who you are. I understand, I said. And you, Sarah said, turning to Victoria, are banned until you apologize to everyone here for trying to manufacture an ethics violation out of someone's desire for privacy. Victoria's mouth opened and closed. I can't believe you're taking her side. I'm taking the side of facts, Sarah said. Your mother-in-law made a charitable decision through normal business channels. She happened to visit my shop coincidentally. She didn't tell you because she'd been explicitly asked to step back from your lives. That's not sinister, that's respect. Victoria stormed out without another word. Gregory, who I'd almost forgot was present, gave me an apologetic look and hurried after her. I sat back down. David brought me a fresh coffee without being asked. Sarah came out from behind the counter and sat across from me. That was intense, she said. I'm sorry, I said. I should have told you from the beginning. You should have, she agreed. But I also understand why you didn't, and I appreciate that you didn't try to manipulate the situation when it came up. A lot of people would have. I almost did, I admitted. I almost stood up and claimed that I'd come here because your shop's business model was sustainable and I was studying it for corporate impact purposes. Something that would make my presence look intentional and strategic rather than desperate and self-protective. Didn't you? David asked, bringing a chair over to join us. Because I'm tired, I said. I'm tired of strategic thinking. I'm tired of controlling narratives. I'm tired of being the CEO even when I'm not at work. What are you going to do now? Sarah asked. I thought about Gregory, probably trying to convince Victoria to come back. I thought about my role at Meridian, which had felt increasingly hollow over the past year. I thought about the version of myself I'd been trying to become, small, unobtrusive, invisible. I think, I said slowly, that I'm going to talk to Gregory about Victoria. I'm going to be honest about what I think is happening in their relationship. And I'm going to let him make his own choice about whether he wants to stay married to someone who's built her sense of self-worth on my diminishment. That's bold, David said. I'm tired of being safe, I said. I came here to disappear and it felt good for a while, but disappearing isn't the answer. I don't think I should have to make myself small to be acceptable to my family. And I don't think pretending to be less than I am is any more honest than being exactly who I am. Are you? Sarah asked. Exactly, I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I'd had in months. Someone who likes good coffee, I said. Someone who spent 32 years building something and is starting to wonder if there's something else. Someone who's learning very slowly that power doesn't have to be a weapon. Someone who came to your coffee shop not because I was strategic but because I was lost. Welcome back, Sarah said. To being found, I picked up my coffee and took a long sip. It was perfect, just the right temperature, just the right balance of bitter and sweet. Be here same time next week, I said, and I meant it, not because I was hiding, but because I'd finally found somewhere that felt like home. 6 months later, Gregory and Victoria divorced. Gregory took a position at a nonprofit I'd never even heard of before he started working there. I saw my son weekly, and he never asked me to be smaller. Sarah's shop expanded to 2 locations, both sustainable, both with my explicit support and her complete knowledge of it. And I came to the daily grind 3 times a week, where I was both a leaner Voss CEO and a leaner, the woman in the corner who read mysteries and left generous tips. I learned that those 2 versions of myself didn't have to be enemies. I learned that power was only corrupting if you used it on people who had no choice. And I learned that the most important people in your life are the ones who see all of you and love you anyway.